Iran's drone strategy was supposed to bankrupt the United States Navy. It took 11 days to destroy it instead. Right now, in the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. is firing Iran's own weapon back at it. Not a version of it, not something inspired by it, the actual weapon, captured, reverse-engineered, upgraded, and pointed at the force that built it. Iran has no answer for what is hunting its fleet. And the most dangerous part? The weapon costs $35,000. Operation Epic Fury launched on February 28th. In the first 24 hours alone, more than 1,000 targets were struck. By day 16, CENTCOM confirmed over 6,000 combat flights and more than 100 Iranian naval vessels destroyed. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, two weapons nobody had ever used in combat before appeared over the strait. One of them was built from Iran's own blueprints. The other, the PRSM, hit targets Iran believed were completely out of reach, targets that were placed at that distance deliberately. Targets Iranian planners calculated were safe, they were not. But that is not the most consequential part of this conflict. Something else happened in that theater, something that changes every future war the United States fights, not just this one. And almost no one in the mainstream coverage has connected all three pieces of what just happened in that strait. By the end of this video, son, you will understand exactly why Iran had no counter for any of it. Phase 3, 4-beat chunks. What happened, to why it matters, to what changed, to what comes next. Enemy credibility established. To understand what just happened, you need to understand what Iran was trying to do. And to understand that, you need to understand the geography. The Strait of Hormuz, 33 miles wide at its narrowest point. That is the entire gap between the Iranian coast to the north and the Omani coast to the south. Every tanker heading out of Saudi Arabia, out of Iraq, out of Kuwait, out of the UAE, it comes through here. There is no bypass. There is no alternative route. 20% of the world's entire oil supply moves through 33 miles of water every single day. Iran's military planners looked at that number for 30 years and saw one thing: a lever. Pull it, and the global economy feels it within 48 hours. Energy markets move. Shipping insurance premiums spike overnight. Tanker captains start doing math about whether the cargo is worth the risk. Close the strait long enough and the pressure doesn't just hit Washington. It hits Beijing, it hits Tokyo, it hits every economy on Earth that runs on oil. You don't need to defeat the United States Navy to win in the strait, you just need to make the cost of keeping it open unbearable. So they built a 3-layer architecture designed exactly for that purpose. Layer 1 was the financial attack. Flood U.S. air defense with enough cheap Shahed 136 drones, each one costing between $20,000 and $50,000, and force America to intercept them with Patriot missiles that cost up to $4 million each. Do that at scale for long enough, and the U.S. either runs out of missiles or runs out of political will to keep spending at that ratio. Iran did not need to win the exchange militarily. It needed to win it financially. And it had reason to believe it could. U.S. Patriot stockpiles had already been drawn down significantly by years of transfers to Ukraine, reducing available inventory well below wartime requirements. That strategy was not stupid. It was working. Layer 2 was the physical denial. Fast attack craft, the PKAP-2, fiberglass hulls, 42 knots, each one carrying a Nasser-1 anti-ship missile with 35 kilometers of range. Small enough to hide in commercial shipping radar returns, fast enough to close on a vessel before a response can be organized. The IRGC Navy spent 4 decades perfecting swarm tactics. Not one boat threatening one ship, but many boats simultaneously, each one tucked behind a supertanker where the only weapon precise enough to engage it is a hellfire from a helicopter that hasn't arrived yet. Layer 3 was the buried insurance policy, underground silos, hardened bunkers cut into the rock along Iran's southern coastline near the strait, anti-ship cruise missiles stored deep below the surface, below the blast radius of anything a carrier strike group could deliver in a first strike. Positioned there specifically because Iranian planners war-gamed every American first strike scenario and placed their most important missiles outside the damage envelope of every weapon the U.S. was known to carry. 3 layers, simultaneously activated, each one designed to complicate the response to the other 2. Go after the drones and the fast boats push into the shipping lanes while you're looking up. Engage the fast boats and the underground missiles have an open, targeting picture on the ships doing the engaging, bomb the known sites from altitude and the swarm launches while you're inbound. By the time Operation Epic Fury launched, Iran believed the architecture was complete. It wasn't. On March 1st, before the full weight of the American response had landed, Iran demonstrated exactly how seriously it had prepared its doctrine. An Iranian unmanned surface boat struck the commercial tanker MKD Voyom in the Gulf of Oman. Iran also damaged the U.S.-flagged vessel Stena Imperative. Iran was not just attacking the Navy. It was simultaneously attacking the global shipping economy and forcing U.S. forces to defend against threats above the water and threats at the waterline at the same time. 2 attack vectors, 1 response force. Iran's 3-layer architecture was operating. The strait was effectively disrupted. Tanker traffic fell sharply. Oil risk premiums spiked. Commercial shipping stopped transiting without hesitation. The question was what the U.S. brought to answer it. Iran had reason to believe the answer would be slow. The U.S. Navy was operating in a theater where Iran had home field advantage, local geography, proximity to shore-based assets, fast attack boats that knew every commercial shipping lane they could use for concealment. The strait is Iran's backyard. The underground silos had been hardened over years. The Shahed production lines were running. The financial math of attrition was running in Iran's favor as long as the U.S. was limited to traditional interception tools and sequential response planning. What Iran did not model was a U.S. response that addressed all 3 layers simultaneously, not sequentially, not reactively, but in parallel from the first night. Every element of Iran's doctrine assumed a sequential American response. Deal with the most urgent threat first, then move to the next layer. Sequential response against a layered threat means the layers not currently being addressed are still operating freely. Iran designed its architecture specifically to exploit that pattern. Operation Epic Fury collapsed that assumption from the opening strikes on February 28th. The Lucas drone first appeared in combat during the opening strikes of Epic Fury on February 28th. No announcement before the operation, no press release, it was just there, striking. CENTCOM confirmed it the same day. Admiral Brad Cooper, commanding U.S. Central Command, described the deployment publicly, making clear the design was based on Iranian Shahed drones and stating the U.S. had effectively turned Iran's own weapon back against it. The name stands for Low-Cost Uncrewed Combat Attack System. It is produced by Spectre Works, an Arizona-based defense contractor. CENTCOM confirmed the cost $35,000 per unit. Lucas is a reverse-engineered Shahed 136. The U.S. captured Iranian drones from downed units in Ukraine, from Allied intelligence, from battlefield recovery, studied the airframe, geometry, the propulsion system, the navigation architecture, and rebuilt it better with critical upgrades. The original Shahed navigates on pre-programmed GPS coordinates loaded before launch. It follows a fixed route. It cannot adapt to a moving target in real time. Lucas uses a different navigation architecture, confirmed by defense analysts to incorporate Starlink-type commercial satellite connectivity running on infrastructure that Iran's electronic warfare systems were never designed to jam, because nobody expected a military weapon to run on commercial satellite infrastructure. That gap is the technical heart of why the system worked. Lucas also carries autonomous coordination features. Drones in the same strike package can cooperate dynamically, adjusting their approach as conditions change. They were launched in groups of 4 to 10 with ground launch from Task Force Scorpion Strike, the dedicated one-way attack drone unit CENTCOM activated in December 2025, specifically for this mission. Now, one important caveat, the coverage missed. Lucas was not in full-rate production when Epic Fury launched. The Pentagon's own chief technology officer confirmed the inventory was in the dozens when the operation began. These were not mass swarms in the Shahed sense, they were precision strike deployments against specific high-value targets. IRGC command nodes, air defense assets, radar sites, missile launch infrastructure. The system is designed for soft and semi-hardened targets, not deep bunkers. That distinction matters for what comes next. The cost is $35,000 per unit. Iran's radar-guided surface-to-air missiles cost more than that. The financial logic Iran built its doctrine around, make the defender spend 50 times what the attacker spends, has been reversed. The weapon Iran designed to make American defense unaffordable now has an affordable answer. Here is the operational result. CENTCOM confirmed Iran's drone assault rate fell by 95% from its peak during the operation, not because Iran ran out of Shaheds, Because the infrastructure enabling those launches, the command nodes, the launch sites, the radar systems protecting them, had been systematically degraded. You stop the swarm at the source, degrade the radar protecting the bunker, and the bunker becomes far less dangerous. That is the doctrine Lucas was built to support, and it worked. 13 U.S. service members were killed during the operation, including 6 in the crash of a KC-135 refueling aircraft over Iraq. That cost is part of every number that came out of CENTCOM. Every strike total has a human price. That's a problem for Iran, and it gets worse. While Lucas was striking Iran's air defense and command infrastructure from the air, something else was hitting targets on the ground that Iran believed were completely, mathematically, physically protected. The PRSM, the Precision Strike Missile, made its first ever operational combat appearance during Operation Epic Fury. Not a test, not a demonstration, a live combat engagement. CENTCOM released audio-visual material clearly showing PRSM launches. Its combat debut in Iran was confirmed by multiple independent outlets. PRSM fires from HIMARS, the mobile rocket launcher that changed the strategic geography of the Ukraine conflict. But PRSM is a different weapon to ATAC-EMS, which HIMARS previously fired. PRSM has a longer range, exceeding 480 kilometers, a smaller radar cross-section, and next-generation precision guidance. Iranian military planners knew the ATAC-EMS range precisely. They used it as a design constraint. Valuable command and control infrastructure, missile storage facilities, hardened communications nodes, all placed at distances calculated to sit outside ATAC-EMS range. The safe zone was drawn with that number as the outer boundary. PRSM rendered those calculations obsolete the moment it launched. The facilities were placed at that distance specifically because they were safe. They were not safe. And because HIMARS is mobile, fire and move before counter-battery radar builds a solution, Iran's artillery systems could not locate it. You cannot defend fixed assets against a launcher you cannot find. 2 new weapons, 2 first-ever combat appearances, both in the same theater, both in the same operation, and neither of them is the most consequential development in this conflict. Then the AI turned on. This is the part of Operation Epic Fury that changes everything beyond this conflict. Multiple confirmed reports, including from the Wall Street Journal and Defense Scoop, confirmed that CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper publicly touted the use of artificial intelligence targeting tools in the fight against Iran during Operation Epic Fury. AI-assisted targeting used for real-time sensor fusion, object identification across hundreds of objects, simultaneous drone feeds, and target allocation faster than any human analytical team could manage. This is the first confirmed large-scale operational deployment of AI targeting tools in an active high-intensity combat operation. Not a pilot program, not a field test, live, against real targets, in the Strait of Hormuz. Think about what that means practically. Before AI-assisted targeting, the bottleneck in a complex multi-domain engagement like Epic Fury was human processing speed. An analyst receives a feed from a drone showing a contact on the water. That analyst needs to identify the contact, cross-reference it against known IR/GC patrol patterns, deconflict it against allied or neutral shipping, select an appropriate strike asset, and transmit the targeting package. In a sophisticated intelligence setup, that process takes minutes. The AI targeting system does it in seconds, across hundreds of feeds simultaneously. The system is not waiting for one analyst to finish one target before moving to the next. It is processing every feed at the same time, building the targeting picture across the entire theater in parallel. Iran's commanders in this conflict were operating on human decision timelines. Their intelligence officers were receiving reports, analyzing them, escalating recommendations, waiting for command authority. That is how every military in the world operates. The assumption has always been that both sides are limited by the same biological constraint. Human beings can only think so fast. That assumption no longer holds for the United States military operating in this theater. There is no tactical adjustment that closes a gap between minutes and seconds. You cannot train human analysts to think faster than a machine. Here is what that means in concrete terms for the Strait of Hormuz. Iran was launching drone and missile attacks from multiple directions simultaneously, from the coast, from vessels, from inland launch sites. Each threat requires identification, classification, deconfliction against neutral shipping, strike asset allocation, and execution authority. In a traditional command structure, those steps run in sequence. In a theater where AI targeting tools are compressing each of those steps to near-simultaneous machine processing across hundreds of feeds at once, the entire engagement loop runs at a pace Iran's command structure was never designed to match. Defense Scoop confirmed that Admiral Cooper specifically touted the use of AI in the fight against Iran. The quote matters. A CENTCOM commander publicly crediting artificial intelligence as a meaningful operational tool in a live, high-intensity conflict. That has never happened before. It changes what every adversary that uses human decision timelines, which is every adversary, needs to plan for. The Strait of Hormuz in February and March 2026 was not just a test of weapons, it was a test of decision architecture. Iran had superior locale knowledge, home field geography, and decades of rehearsed doctrine. The U.S. had Lucas, PRSM, and an AI-assisted targeting system running at machine speed. We now know which combination won the decision loop. Iran designed the Shahed 136 as the perfect asymmetric weapon. The logic was elegant. Make the defender spend 50 times what the attacker spends. Do it at scale. Do it long enough. And eventually, either the money runs out or the political will does. It was a serious strategy, a historically grounded strategy. Asymmetric cost imposition has worked against the United States before. The IED in Iraq cost almost nothing to manufacture. The response to it cost billions. The mine in the Persian Gulf cost Iran almost nothing. The USS Samuel B. Roberts nearly sank. The world's oil markets moved. Iran had decades of evidence that this approach could work. They refined it. They iterated on it. They built the Shahed to be the scalable, mass-producible centerpiece of a doctrine specifically designed to make the United States too expensive to fight. The U.S. captured one, studied it, took it apart. Then they rebuilt it. They upgraded the navigation so Iran's electronic warfare cannot disrupt it. They added autonomous coordination features so groups of drones can cooperate without a human operator managing each one. And they manufactured it at $35,000 per unit, the same cost bracket as the weapon they were reverse engineering. The same price point Iran had selected specifically because it made American defense unaffordable. Iran built a weapon designed to bankrupt American air defense. The U.S. took that weapon, improved it, and used it against the Iranian military. And while Lucas was striking command nodes and radar sites, PRSM was erasing the range calculations that told Iranian planners their most important infrastructure was safe. And AI targeting was compressing the decision timeline inside that theater to a speed their command structure was never built to match. 3 weapons, 3 simultaneous answers to 3 layers of Iranian doctrine. And that is why every number coming out of CENTCOM looks the way it does. Here is where the operation stands. By day 16, CENTCOM confirmed more than 6,000 combat flights and over 100 Iranian naval vessels destroyed or damaged. The 16 dedicated mine-laying vessels that seeded the strait with Maham limpet mines, gone. The underground missile bunkers along Iran's southern coast, struck by GBU-72 deep penetrator munitions, 5,000 pounds each, designed to go through reinforced concrete and rock before detonating at depth. CENTCOM confirmed Iran's drone attacks had been reduced by 95% from their peak rate, but those numbers have costs attached to them. Before Lucas and PRSM arrived in the theater, the U.S. was burning through expensive interceptors at a rate that was strategically unsustainable. Every high-cost intercept against a cheap drone was exactly the financial outcome Iran's doctrine was built to force. The U.S. was winning every tactical engagement and losing the financial one simultaneously. That tension was real, it was serious, and it was by design. Lucas changed that equation, not by replacing the Patriot. Lucas is not an interceptor, it is a strike weapon, but by destroying the infrastructure that was generating the threat. The IRGC command nodes, the radar sites, the air defense assets that were enabling the swarm launches. You stop the swarm at the source. Every IRGC target struck by a $35,000 Lucas drone is a target that no longer needs a $4 million interceptor. The cost asymmetry that Iran spent years constructing has been reversed. PRSM changed the geography of the conflict in a way that cannot be undone. Iranian military planners chose the locations of their most protected facilities based on a range calculation that is now obsolete. Those decisions were made using the previous maximum range as the outer boundary. Every one of those facilities now sits inside PRSM range. Iran cannot move them. Hardened underground infrastructure takes years and billions of dollars to build. They are where they are, and they are targetable. AI targeting changed the time dimension of warfare itself. When the US military can identify, classify, and strike a target in seconds, processing hundreds of simultaneous sensor feeds, and Iran's commanders are operating on human decision timelines measured in minutes, the outcome of any engagement in that theater is determined before the shooting starts. Speed is not an advantage in degree, it is an advantage in kind. Now consider what Beijing is watching from the South China Sea. China has spent 20 years building an asymmetric cost imposition strategy of its own. Anti-ship missiles, drone swarms, fast attack craft, subsurface threats, all built with the same underlying logic Iran used in the Strait. Make a US carrier group too expensive to operate near Taiwan. Make the cost of presence higher than Washington is willing to pay. Every Chinese admiral, every PLA Navy planner watching Operation Epic Fury is now running the same calculation. They are asking if the United States can reverse engineer asymmetric weapons, upgrade them, field AI-assisted targeting that eliminates the human processing bottleneck, does our doctrine still work? The answer they are getting is not the answer they built their strategy around. Consider the specific combination watching from Beijing. Lucas demonstrated that the US can field reverse-engineered asymmetric weapons at the same cost bracket as the original, removing the financial advantage the attacker held. PRSM demonstrated that safe distances built into adversary planning are not safe once a new generation weapon is fielded, meaning every facility China has positioned outside what it believed was US strike range needs to be reevaluated. And AI-assisted targeting demonstrated that the human decision bottleneck, the one constraint that put every military on roughly equal footing in terms of processing speed, has been removed from the US side of the equation. China has publicly stated it is watching the conflict closely. Every lesson Iran learned the hard way in the Strait of Hormuz will enter Chinese military planning cycles. But the lesson cuts both ways. The US also learned what the next version of this conflict looks like, and the weapons that answered Iran's doctrine are already being evaluated for the much larger scale and much more capable threat that any Indo-Pacific contingency would represent. Lucas's warhead is too small for armored naval vessels at Pacific distances. PRSM's range, while extended, still operates at theater scale. The AI targeting architecture is early. What Epic Fury proved is the concept. The question is how fast the US can scale it. 20% of the world's oil transits the Strait of Hormuz. Every Iranian vessel destroyed in that waterway sends a signal that travels directly to every naval planning room in every country that has built a strategy around challenging US carrier strike groups in a contested choke point. The signal is not that the US won a naval battle. The signal is that the cost calculus that every asymmetric strategy depends on, cheap weapons beat expensive defenses, has a new answer. Iran entered this conflict with a serious strategy, constructed over decades, calibrated to real vulnerabilities. It drew first blood. Drone boats struck commercial tankers in the Gulf of Oman, the first confirmed state-led explosive drone boat attacks on commercial shipping in history. Iran retaliated when Karg Island was struck by launching drone and missile attacks against US and allied positions in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Iran adapted faster than US planners expected in several areas. Multiple senior officials acknowledged the US had underestimated Iran's willingness to close the strait to commercial traffic. Iran is not a military to be dismissed. But the weapons the US brought to this theater were purpose-built answers to Iran's doctrine. Lucas was built because the Shahed program existed. PRSM was built because ATAS-EMS range limits were a known constraint that adversaries had already wargamed around. AI targeting was deployed because the human processing bottleneck was a known vulnerability. Every element of Iran's three-layer architecture had a specific American answer waiting for it. There are costs on the American side that must not be understated. 13 U.S. service members were killed during the operation, including 6 in the crash of a KC-135 refueling aircraft over Iraq. That aircraft, that crew, they are part of every number that came out of CENTCOM. Every strike total has a human cost attached to it. Every victory in that strait was paid for. The operation is ongoing. The strait is not fully cleared. Commercial shipping is still proceeding with caution. Iran still has missiles, still has drones, still has the capacity to complicate operations in that waterway. A coalition mine clearance effort involving 22 nations is active. This is not a declaration of victory, but the doctrine is broken. The financial logic of the swarm was reversed by a reverse-engineered version of the swarm itself. The range calculations that determined where to build Iran's most protected facilities were wrong. The AI-assisted targeting system operating in that theater is getting faster, learning from every engagement, and building a picture of the battle space that no adversary in this conflict has a counter for. There is one more detail that almost every outlet missed. The Air Force has been trying to retire the A-10 Warthog since 2015. Budget pressure, modernization priorities. The argument, legitimate from the Air Force perspective, was that F-35s and drones could replace the close air support role at lower long-term cost. Congress disagreed. The National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026 blocked the retirement plan, mandating a minimum A-10 inventory through September 2026. The Air Force was legally prevented from retiring the Warthog. Then, Operation Epic Fury launched, and the A-10 went to war in the most strategically critical waterway on the planet, flying low over the strait, hunting fast attack boats at 200 feet, doing a job that no other aircraft in the U.S. inventory could replicate at that altitude at that loiter time, with that cannon volume and that level of armor protection against ground fire. The aircraft, the Air Force said was obsolete, turned out to be exactly what the mission required. The A-10's budget documents still call for the fleet phased out by 2027. Operation Epic Fury may be its last major combat deployment, or it may be the war that saves it. That question is now being asked at every level of the Pentagon, and the answer will shape American close air support capability for the next 20 years. Iran fired everything it had at the United States Navy in the Strait of Hormuz. The numbers that came back from CENTCOM said 6,000 combat flights, 100 naval vessels destroyed or damaged, 3 new weapons in their first combat appearance, 95% reduction in Iran's drone assault rate, and a cost equation that Iran spent decades constructing and reversed by a $35,000 drone built from the blueprint Iran itself provided. Iran built the perfect asymmetric weapon. America made it better. Then America fired it back. U.S. just discovered Iran's biggest underground secret, then the B-2 bomber struck.